All right, as you can see, I'm back resigned into the bedroom. They don't want to hear me as I talk to you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the events just before the revolution. Um, it's good to know that the colonists were very hesitant. They were hesitant to go to war against England for a lot of reasons. First, like I've said many, many times, England was the biggest, baddest dog on the planet. And so that was not something they did lightly or thought about easily because the chances of them losing against England were great. Also, a lot of them were still loyal to the king, and they were trying still to try to just make the king understand that, oh, we just really want our rights as British citizens. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later because kind of they were hedging on that just a little bit. But anyway, in 1774, 75, just before the revolution broke out, the first Continental Congress was held in Philadelphia. And it's good for you to remember that Philadelphia was probably like the seat of government at this point in time. All the colonies sent delegates except for Georgia, which was kind of far away. Georgia was a kind of far away colony. And there were 55 delegates in all. So that's pretty good representation from the colonies, given the fact of the population back then. Mostly they just consider their options, like go to war, not go to war, send more letters of complaint, what should we do? And to petition their grievances. And again, the grievance is just a complaint. And you need to know that term because we'll talk about it in class a lot. A grievance is a complaint. And they decided what they should do is organize their militias. Okay, so a militia is, again, a term that you should know because everyone serves in it. All the adult men served in a militia in their colony. Okay, so the loyalists are called Tories and the patriots are called rebels. I won't dwell on this too much, but it's just a good thing that you should know those terms. And each colonist has to decide whether to remain loyal to the king or join up with the patriots, and some just wanted to wait and see. They're the people who just sit on the fence. You can see the pie chart at the bottom. Not everybody is in favor of rebelling against the king. There are some who want to remain neutral and some who just don't know yet. And there's some, honestly, that live out in the backcountry up near the Appalachian Mountains. They feel like it doesn't concern them and they really don't even care. So it's not like everybody is fomenting for rebellion because they weren't. All right, so let's talk about the militias because this is important. All the men in the colonies had served in these militias since the beginning of the colonies because that's what they had used for their defense at the beginning. They figured, hey, if you're an adult male, you have to learn how to shoot a musket because you're going to have to learn how to hunt to feed yourself. And so we're going to use these militias to defend ourselves against Native American attacks or, maybe if the Spanish would sail along and decide they're going to attack us. From whatever attacks, that was their first line of defense back before the king sent many soldiers. Even in the 1600s, the militias were their first line of defense. And they were required to provide their own musket and ammunition. But as tensions rose now between the king and the subjects, the colonists, these militias started to stockpile weapons and ammunition in central locations so that if at a minute's notice, like on the spur of the moment, they had to put their hands on these guns and ammunition in large quantities, because usually these people had more than one musket. Not always, because some people couldn't afford it. But if they could, they had more than one. So then they could put their hands on this weaponry all in one central location. Now, you can see that this doesn't bode well. This is almost like starting your own little armies. But this is what they felt they had to do because, let's see, who were they going to protect themselves from? That would be the British soldiers. All right, the British aren't stupid. They know what's going on. They've got spies and they've been living there too, and they know that the colonists are getting ready for a fight and they're getting ready too. The king continues sending troops, especially to Boston, places like Boston especially, and also Philadelphia sends them in by the thousands. And of course, this is intimidating to the local people and it is obnoxious to the local people. And you need to know this guy, Thomas Gage. And he is sent out into the Massachusetts countryside. Now, Boston's in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is just one of those little New England colonies. It's the one that looks to me like an elf shoe, sort of a little hook on the end. He is sent out into the Massachusetts countryside to try to find these stockpiles of weapons because he knows that's what's going on. Not everyone, but Gage has his information and he knows that they've been stockpiling weapons. And it's his job to try to find these weapons so that when the British try to take control, these colonists cannot put their hands on that weaponry and ammunition quickly. And this is how the battles of Lexington and Concord break out. And these are super huge and important. These are the ones as the shot heard around the world. Shot heard around the world as the battles of Lexington and Concord. So this is kind of the backstory for it. I don't expect you to remember every little bit of this, but this is where Paul Revere makes his famous ride, is right before these two battles, Lexington and Concord. And it's in April 1775, and one of the spies, Joseph Warren, notices, he's just living he's living there, okay? So he's a spy, but he's just kind of living there, and he's noticing that the troops are moving. They're on the move. And so he makes notice, and he says, hey, Revere, there's something going on here. These troops are on the move. They're moving out of town. They're marching out into the countryside. I don't know what's up. So Paul Revere and his friend William Dawes took off on horseback to start to warn the people in the countryside, because obviously the troops are on foot. And Revere and his friend know the countryside. They know the back roads, but the troops don't. They're British, Revere's grown up there and lived there his whole life. So is Dawes the same way. And like it says here, they both belong to the Sons of Liberty, and that's Sam Adams's group. And so they take off on horseback as fast as they can go. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have to change out horses during the night because they run the horses. So they can warn the people to hide the weapons, because Gage has got information on where the weapons might be, and Revere is saying, you've got to move them. You've got to move those weapons or they're going to find them. Later on, and you don't need to know this man's name right now, but later on you're going to have to know, like Henry Longfellow. He's a famous American poet, and you probably have to study him in high school. He writes a famous poem about Paul Revere, which I might show you in class, or we might talk about in class. So they do. They warn all the people, the militias. They move their weapons away from where the original hiding place was, and they spread them out over farms and in, things like bales of hay. The redcoats can't possibly search every single place in the Massachusetts countryside. They can't possibly. And they find a few weapons, but nothing much. And then on their march back into town, now they're tired. They have been marching since the evening of the night before, marching out, looking all over the place, and then told to look in every farm they can find. They can't find much of anything. And then they start marching in columns back into town on the roads. And this guy, Captain John Parker, he has his militia people, and they start picking off the redcoats. Well, they've got red coats on. Parker and his guys are, at first they try to meet them on a battlefield in formation. That doesn't work out very well. But later on, they just start following them back into town and hiding in the trees and bushes and picking them off all along the way. And it just is a disastrous, I wouldn't say it's a defeat for the British, but it just looks terrible. They didn't find any weapons. They didn't find any militia leaders because what do they have tattooed on their forehead, militia leader? No. They kind of know who these people are, but they can't pick them out for sure because it also might be a farmer. And then on top of that, they take casualties all the way back from John Parker and his guys, and it doesn't look good at all. So after Lexington and Concord, this guy, Benedict Arnold, he becomes a traitor later on, but right now he's a big patriot. He raises a force of people and takes them north. There's a little map at the bottom, and I think it's important that you look at it. Notice he's going north, north, north in New York and captures Fort Ticonderoga way, way up far north, up near Lake Champlain, up near almost up to Canada. And we have a battle carrier named after, an aircraft carrier named after Ticonderoga. Many things have been named after Ticonderoga because it's a famous, famous Revolutionary War battle. Now, he gets to Fort Ticonderoga and he is very successful there. He takes it over. The British aren't expecting him. And more importantly, he collects up guns, big guns, cannons and things like that. That the colonists don't have cannons. They don't have things like cannons. They have, muskets. And so luckily for him, for Benedict Arnold, and it's a good move on his part, he finds cannons and he starts to bring them. Now, understand, he has to drag these things back down south to make use of them. But still, it's a big coup for him. So again, on this frame, I'm telling you, he captures cannons and ammunition, and they use these cannons against the British later on. it's sort of ironic that George Washington is going to take these very same British cannons and eventually turn them down on the British in Boston eventually. I'll tell you about that when we get to it. Now, Ethan Allen's another important name here. So you've got Benedict Arnold, Ethan Allen here that you have to remember. He is from nearby Vermont, and he raises a group of men known as the Green Mountain Boys. So put those two together, Ethan Allen, Green Mountain Boys, those two. And so those two people start to raise organized groups of men and start to train them in more than just as, okay, we're going to go out hunting on a Saturday afternoon. We are going to train now as military. It's not hugely successful at first, but it's a big step in a different direction. And again, this last bullet point, later Arnold becomes a traitor because he defects to the British. But at this point, you need to know he is hugely important in the success of the colonial rebels. All right, Battle of Bunker Hill. After Lexington and Concord, people begin to join up with the militia around Boston because they're furious about the whole thing. And the British stay in Boston. They occupy Boston while the rebel militia is camped outside on Bunker Hill. You can see the little map up there. On June 16th, so remember, we had April, is Lexington and Concord, and then we have Arnold going north and capturing the cannons and dragging them back down. On June 16th, the British began to attack the rebels on Bunker Hill, and they repel them successfully until they run out of ammunition. So Battle of Bunker Hill goes pretty poorly for the rebels after they run out of ammunition, but they're successful at first, and the British take pretty heavy casualties. Why is the Battle of Bunker Hill important then if the rebels kind of lose it? Well, it's important because the British find out that this is not going to be a cakewalk. Yes, we are trained soldiers. Yes, we have all this ammunition, we have guns, we have all the generals, but these people are not going to give up easily. And they're not stupid, and they know how to take advantage of geography, taking the high ground. They know how to fight behind trees and bushes, and this may not be an easy thing, the easy thing that we thought it was going to be.